So welcome everyone to International Women's Day. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the first ever Faculty of Science virtual International Women's Day. Over the next hour, we will learn what Choose to Challenge means to 5 of our distinguished alumna and many of you as well. I'm Megan Middleton, and I'm the Associate Director of Advancement in the Faculty of Science. As mentioned earlier, today we have over 300 people registered from all over the world. We have students, faculty, staff, alumni, and community partners. So we're really excited that so many of you chose to spend an hour with us today. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the panelists for joining us. I'm super excited to hear them discuss their careers, their journeys, their balance with family, and what Choose to Challenge means to them. I would also like to just give a quick shout out to a science lecturer that many of you know and love. Dr. Jen Parks has just signed her paperwork to become the first female director of the GeoEng program, which is awesome. So what a better announcement could there be on International Women's Day? So congratulations, Jen. Now for housekeeping. So in the good old days, this is where I would tell you where the bathrooms were, but now I will let you all know that no one will be on video or on audio. So we will be using the chat function. The panelists will be busy, chatting away themselves, but they will be able to see a copy of the chat afterwards. So please use the chat. Let them know what you think. If you weren't able to send your Choose to Challenge into us ahead of time, please include that in the chat as well. We will save a few minutes afterwards for questions. So again, please use the Q&A feature for any questions that you might have. Let me just make sure I've told you everything. Oh, and the most important, we will be recording this. So next week you'll receive a link from us and this will be up on YouTube for anyone who wants to watch it again. So that's enough for me because you didn't come to hear me talk. So I would like to introduce Dr. Bob Lemieux, who is the Dean of Science, to kick things off today.
All right. Thanks, Megan. And good afternoon, everyone. And happy International Women's Day. I'm so happy to be here to celebrate and acknowledge the incredible contributions and inroads women continue to make around the world. As you're aware, this year, the theme of International Women's Day is Choose to Challenge. And today we have an exceptional panel of female science alumni who embody this theme in its entirety. This is going to be an insightful and lively discussion. But before we go any further, the University of Waterloo acknowledges that much of our work takes place on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our main campus is situated on the Haldimand Tract, the land promised to the Six Nations, that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Our active work towards reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is centralized within our Indigenous Initiatives Office. I would like to introduce you to our host of this event, Dr. Jennifer Alami. Jennifer is a biomedical consultant leader in Toronto, and I've had the pleasure of meeting Jennifer several times in person. In fact, the last time was about a year ago at our 2020 International Women's Day dinner, right before the lockdown. With her extensive experience in government, private sector groups, community committees, and myriad of boards and charities, I can't think of a better person to lead us in today's panel. To our other 4 panelists, Therese, Yvonne, Danya, and Ellie, thank you for being with us today and for discussing all the various and inspirational reasons why you choose to challenge. It's absolutely wonderful to hear such stories from our science alumni. You're a source of pride to our Faculty of Science. And to our guests watching today, thank you for submitting your own reasons on why you choose to challenge. I've seen some of your tweets and Instagram posts, and as a dean, a scientist, husband, and father of 2 daughters, I'm filled with pride, a sense of awe, and most of all, I'm incredibly inspired by what I've read. You remind me that we all need to choose to challenge every day in every way that we can. So now I'll pass it over to Jennifer to get the discussion underway. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, and nice to see you again. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for International Women's Day, where we have an exciting hour of discussion on why we choose to challenge. It is my pleasure to introduce our panel for this stimulating conversation. Please help me welcome Therese Hayes, who has more than 25 years of experience in brand building through communication, PR, and marketing, spanning from biotech to solar energy to black stretchy pants. including leadership roles at Lululemon as Senior VP of Communications and Sustainability and at Whistler Blackcomb Holdings Incorporated. She chooses to challenge the traditional idea of balance and a path to success, and loves to consider how you can create your own story in today's environment, in which change is the only constant. Thank you, Therese, for joining us today.
Thanks
Next
very
to-
much for having me.
Yeah, it's great to see you. We have next Yvonne Stevens, who has attended the University of Waterloo as an international student, obtaining her Bachelor's of Science and Master's of Science, and is currently an Associate Director for Quality Control at Lyell Immunopharma, which is a company focused on curative therapies for solid tumors. This position fits perfectly into her life goal of continuous improvement. According to Yvonne, there's never a perfect time to choose the challenge. Everything is not going to line up with flashing signs saying choose challenge now. You choose the time, you make it work as best you can, then you take the plunge. Thank you, Yvonne, for participating in today's event. Nice to see you. We have next, oh, I think you're on mute. There.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, great, great. And then next we have Donya Sagachi, a scientist turned entrepreneur, growing a bioinformatics company in the industrial microbiology space. She is a founder and CEO of her company called Amplitica, which is an early stage bioinformatics startup that builds software tools to analyze microbial genomic data to optimize the microbial communities that carry out industrial processes. Her choose to challenge is to explore our individual balance between professional success and personal fulfillment. Thank you, Donya, for being on this panel discussion today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for the invite.
You're welcome. And lastly, we have Ellie Owens, who is a lawyer and a geologist, and is currently the vice president of E2 Gold, a gold exploration company she co-founded in 2020. As a geologist, she has visited field sites across Canada and the US, including many stints in the Arctic. As a lawyer, she has worked on Bay Street in securities law. Both of these backgrounds contributed to her current position, which is a job that she loves. And Ellie chooses to challenge because improvement only happens through challenge. Thank you all for being here. Nice to see you, Ellie.
Thanks. I'm very excited to be here.
Great. And I'm looking forward to our discussion. So a challenged world brings about change, makes us alert, and builds upon creating generation equality. Choosing to challenge yourself and others helps us change old conventions, teaching us to be independent critical thinkers. You can challenge a bias you have or on your acceptance of the status quo. So my question to you, the panelists, is what does choose to challenge mean to you with regards to work, life, family, and why do you want to choose to challenge? So what do you want to choose to challenge with regards to work? What types of things have you noticed that requires this choose to challenge? For example, is it sexism in the industry that you're in? So there's a lot of different areas that we can touch upon. So if we start with, what is your choose to challenge for work and why do you want to choose to challenge? So I'll start it off with Ellie. What are your thoughts on this topic?
As you said in my intro, I think choose to challenge to me is choosing to improve yourself, and challenge is important for improving individuals, but also broadly society, I think. And the choose part of it is important to me because I think that especially in this day and age when we're trying to strive for equality, there's a lot of pressure on females to challenge all the time. And I think that's not always productive and helpful. I think it's important to be able to choose the time and place and method and what you're challenging. And we're not all good at challenging everything. So for me in my workspace, I choose to challenge the idea that I'm not qualified to speak to certain things or voice my opinion, or choose to challenge the idea that I must know something before actually speaking about it or providing my opinion in a meeting. So that's what I try to focus on, but I really like the fact that I don't have to always challenge. If someone says a joke that's off color, sometimes I'll challenge it, sometimes I won't, because I just don't think it's the appropriate time for me to do that. So that's what I think it means to me.
Thank you very much, Ellie. I appreciate that. And what about yourself, Donya? What is your choose to challenge with regards to work or life or family? And why do you want to choose the challenge?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add because I do agree with very much what Ellie says. But like I said before too, my choose to challenge does align more with being comfortable with fulfilling your personal desires and not feeling like you need to leave work and never be able to come back again. Sheryl Sandberg said this famous quote about 10 years ago in a TED Talk where she says, "Don't leave before you leave. Don't mentally leave a workplace before you need to. You can make those decisions about, for instance, taking mat leave when you get there. Things will figure itself out and it's not necessarily going to be chaotic." And I know for me, for one, I tend to worry about the future a bit too much at times rather than taking it day by day. So yeah, I choose to challenge that, to take it day by day and don't leave before you leave. You have time.
Good point. Thank you for sharing that. And I guess some of our panelists here are actually balancing work and family, and they have expertise in discussing how do you choose, how to deliberate this challenge. So, Yvonne, would you like to share your thoughts?
Sure. So for me, there was always, I wanted to be a scientist since I was 14, and there was always this desire. I also knew I wanted to be a mom, but having this career was integral to who I was as a person. So to me, choose to challenge was making the decision that I was going to go back to work part-time and balance this with a family, even though I lived in an environment where a lot of people were stay-at-home moms. And, there was definitely some comments, some critiques made about the choice that I made, but that was a good balance for me. But also choosing to challenge was knowing that I couldn't do either of those things 100%. And I couldn't have all my cake and eat it, but I just kind of endeavored to do the best that I could on both fronts. And, if I had to go back and make that decision again, I would make it entirely the same way. So choose to challenge for me was balancing my work and balancing having a family and doing both things that I had desired to do with my life.
Thank you, Yvonne. That's great. And I think, Therese, you can definitely add to that, being a mom and having a successful career as well. I'd love to hear what you have to say with regards to your choose to challenge with regards to balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And agree 100% with, what all the other panelists have said. I saw a friend had posted something today where she's saying, along the choose to challenge theme, the idea that you can't be everything, you can't have it all. And I think that's a really good way to look at it. I've looked at it in the past and sort of said, you have to know that at any point you might feel like you're shortchanging something. You're choosing, one day you choose work and another day you choose family, and you kind of manage to keep all those plates spinning at the same time and not have one of them drop. And so I kind of was looking at it like you have to be okay with you're not going to be superwoman. And this person's was a refreshing way to look at it, saying, yes, you actually can. You have to redefine what that is. So being superwoman is actually doing everything at the same time and keeping it all going. Now, maybe they're not all spinning at the same rate, but they haven't fallen off the sticks. So I guess that's a good piece. But I think that is the choose to challenge, that a full life to me is a life that is, includes family and friends and time for me, time at my work, time mentoring, whatever they happen to be. And so I choose to challenge the notion that I have to pick one over the other. I think each one gets its place in the sun, but all of them are important in my life. And those are the kinds of conversations that I have with my children. I have a 16-year-old boy and a 14-year-old girl. And I think these are really important things for them to think about as they get older. How do you choose to challenge the notion that you have to always do one thing or the other? You can do a variety of things, just understand what your capacity is.
That's true. That's true. Thank you, Therese. In terms of challenges and leadership roles in your career and then having a family. So I'm sure that there's always been stages within your career where, you've had to emphasize more of your career as opposed to your family, or vice versa. How have you navigated through that challenge?
Sorry, Jennifer, we just had a few people asking if you could speak a little louder. So I'm just going to rudely appear and then disappear again.
I think this is as loud as I can go unless I'm screaming, but it must be the
Scream
internet.
away. Scream away. It sounds
okay. Sophia.
Yeah, I mean, I always think there's a really funny story where, as a family, when my kids were a little bit younger, they were sort of saying, why are you? They'd gone over to friends and they had cookies at the friend's house, and they came home and they said, Kelly is her name. Kelly's an all-time mom. Why aren't you an all-time mom? And I of course heard all-star. In my mind, I heard all-star. So I kind of took a deep breath and thought, oh man, here's the point. Here's the point. Whereas, as a working mom or a mom with kind of other things that I'm doing, I'm now having to face that my children don't see me as kind of being there for them 100%. And so I sort of said to them, well, why do you think Kelly's an all-time mom? Like, what is it about her that makes him an all-time mom? And they said, well, because she's home all the time. She's an all-time mom. Why aren't you? And I was like, oh, okay, now this is a conversation we can have. So we actually just had the conversation openly and said, okay, we could do that. Mom could be home all the time. And here's what that would mean, right? That I would do these things. And yes, I'd be here to do that for you. But here's what you wouldn't get. Here's some of the things that we have in our life that might not be possible under that scenario, and kind of laid them out for them. And then as a family, the kids sort of said, we think you should keep working. So, they kind of came to terms with, there's an option and there is that potential. And for me, it was a real conversation. Like, if this is what's really important and what's going to drive my family, maybe it is time for me to take a break or to approach things differently. And I didn't have to make that decision at that time. And I was happy, because I do love the balance. I mean, I didn't have my kids till I was 40. And so I had a long career and didn't want to completely exit the work environment, even though, I have very good friends and my sisters have chosen a different path. I'm absolutely not making a comment as to whether or not one way is right or the other way is right. I think it's actually what's right for you and what's right for your family. So to me, it's always about communication and conversation, and bringing other people who are impacted into the discussion, so you feel like you're making it together. And then you don't have to carry that guilt or feeling of guilt or worry that you're not being all that. Because at the end of the day, the decision we came to as a family is, this is actually what works for us. So, I think that's one of the things, whether it's with your family or with your work life or whatever else, you got to get it out in the open and talk about it and challenge it. Really, that's what it is, right? It's challenging the idea, and you challenge it by bringing in other opinions.
And Therese, I would add to that really by saying that, I mean, as women and as leaders, I think something vital that every woman needs in her toolkit is really other women, because other women understand the challenges you're going through. They understand, they also have that emotional IQ that a lot of women have, which you don't always find with your male colleagues. And I think that really, for me in my life, I've been super fortunate to have a lot of very strong women with my family, with my friends, a lot of whom are on this call today. And those are the people that really give me a lot of support and really push me to challenge myself. My mom, raised 5 kids on her own and had a super successful career. So to me, she embodies challenge. And so I grew up learning to how she challenged herself. I challenge myself, and I want nothing more for my daughter than for her to continue challenging herself.
I agree 100%. I mean, I also think it's interesting, you brought up the idea of women colleagues. And I think what's really interesting now that we see that, is still relatively new, is the whole idea of men doing that as well. So, I recently brought somebody onto our team who's fantastic, and her husband is actually taking on the paternity leave, and will have his own choose to challenge. How does he balance now being on paternity leave and being the primary caregiver and also balancing work? And so I think there's an opportunity for us to learn from other women, and for us to learn, for men to learn from us as well. Like, this is something new, and how do you learn to manage and balance? And I mean, that's progress, right? That's amazing that we're seeing that now at a time where, we didn't see it. I mean, when I was younger and having my kids, there really weren't that many men that were doing that. So I love that it's part of the conversation now, and there's examples all over the place. It's fantastic.
I think one of the really interesting things about this conversation is that we kind of talked about this last time. We're talking about balancing here, but I'm suspecting most of us are quite type A personalities and perfectionists, and to get to where we were going really required us to believe that we needed to do things perfectly. And I think one of the interesting things that came out of a previous conversation was that you know, choosing to challenge can also mean choosing to not necessarily separate work and your identity otherwise, or work and your being a mother life or being a parent life. You know, on a minor scale, people were talking about wearing like pink dresses to work and being very feminine, because that's just who they were, and you don't have to do that. You don't have to dress like a man to be really successful. So I think it's a very interesting conversation there to see that challenging also means saying, you know what, my parental identity or my feminine identity or whatever, I'm bringing that to my work as well. I saw there's a really interesting law firm that's starting up where the female leader is really embracing bringing their children in as part of their work. And I think it's I think that's a very neat thing.
Danya?
I agree. I mean, it's hard to relate because I'm not a mother and I don't have kids and I don't have any other priorities but work. So at the place that I'm at today, work is very much taking over my life, and I choose to do that. But I do hope that eventually that can change, and I'm confident that I'll be able to balance it out. I look up to women like you guys, Therese and Yvonne, and other people in the media. I mentioned this before, Gwynne Shotwell, SpaceX. Some days she's at work all the time, barely sees her kids. Other days she takes it off. I mean, life is very much a flow, and you kind of just take it as it comes.
Definitely. I mean, it's an act of balancing, you know, the time that you have during the day between family and career, and trying to, you know, fulfill your own needs in terms of what are your goals in life. I mean, you want to have children, you want to have a career, and there are many hurdles for each of those pathways, and trying to find and choose, you know, which one, you know, needs to go ahead definitely is a challenge. Go ahead, Therese.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that actually in and of itself is a really good point. So, you know, the idea that whatever, maybe one of the other ideas around choose to challenge the traditional idea of success. Like, what is that? Is that, you know, a homemade lunch for your kids? Is it, you know, turning yourself out like beautifully every day? Is it, you know, climbing the corporate ladder? Is it being the best friend to people that you could possibly be? And I think the idea, that's a great sort of, I choose to challenge the dogma, the traditional view that's what success looks like. I mean, you know, the opportunity to create your own path to success, and to say, you know, Danya, for you, you're saying, well, you're not at that, you know, you don't have kids, so that's not what you're balancing, but there's other things you're balancing, right? You might be saying now, you know, at this stage and at this point in my life, what's the most important thing for me is success in the workplace. Like, that's where I'm really putting my energy, and that's where your success is. But it's not, you know, it's not that your other things are not coming to play. It's you're choosing to say, this is actually what I want to do. And at another time, you might choose something else, or you might not. You might choose that, and that might be the path that you have. And what I think is great when we think about women supporting women and International Women's Day is supporting choice in and of itself, like whatever that happens to be for you, and not making it wrong, or that you have to make an excuse or anything. It's just, that's where you want to be. That's what you want to pursue. I mean, that's actually why we are, you know, why we went to university, why we got our education, so that we would be in a position to be able to make that choice for ourselves and determine what our path is going to look like. So I think it's awesome that on the panel we have kind of all people representing all things, so that, you know, we can have those different perspectives, and probably most importantly, that young women now coming through can see, oh, wow, it looks like this, or it looks like that, or it actually looks like a lot of different things. It's not this single path, which is awesome.
Choose a challenge is definitely an individual journey. I would 100% agree. Because what's a challenge to you? Like, you know, some people maybe jumping down and skiing down a cliff is not a challenge, but to me, it's a huge challenge. So I think it's really an individual journey. And I agree with you 100% that as women, we need to support and encourage other women in what is a challenge to them, and what is the path that they have chosen for themselves, even though it may not be the same path that we have chosen for ourselves.
Kind of on that note, there's like a really interesting question in the chat here about when do you decide it's time to slow down and time to take a step back? And I think that's a really great question, and I'm not totally sure of the answer. My thought is that it's when you generally think you're not happy with something. But it's kind of to piggyback on or to dovetail on those answers. My mother was a scientist as well, and she decided to really step back and be mostly a stay-at-home mom. Now, of course, this answer is somewhat, there are financial limitations to this, but of course. But she just decided, like, I like both, but I don't like doing both at the same time. And I'm not happy doing both. And so I think that's an interesting part of Choose to Challenge, is like getting a science degree and then going on and being a working woman or staying at home are both equally valid options and valid ways to challenge what you should be doing, or saying that you don't have to do something that you should be doing.
Yeah, and I very much, sorry, yeah, I very much agree with this notion of freedom and this notion of putting meaning behind what it means to achieve a science degree. I guess it's relevant in our case. And I like to contrast that with other parts of the world, especially on International Women's Day. It's relevant. I'm sure everyone here has sort of heard of the women in STEM paradox, right? Where you compare research between the sexes and science degrees in other parts of the world. And I'm Iranian, so I'm quite familiar with the country that my parents came from, and other surrounding countries in those areas. There are these studies that show that greater than 50% of science degrees are acquired by women. And what's interesting is that when you look at a country such as Iran, which is fairly misogynistic in some ways, and the odds are against women, women are still rising above that. But what's interesting is that in the midst of economic uncertainty and in the midst of adversity, there's more to meaning than just earning a science degree for those women. It's a golden ticket out. It's a ticket to acquiring financial stability so that you can stand on your 2 feet, but it's also, for a lot of them, a ticket out to the West. And so I wonder if it's worth elucidating for us out here in the West, what is the meaning behind earning the science degree? Besides it just being out of sheer interest to us, what else could it give us? And I don't really see that conversation being had in the public space. So
yeah, I love that point. And I have a science degree. I did an undergrad, and then I did a master's in microbiology and immunology, and I work in retail. I work in apparel retail, and I love what I do, and it's really interesting. And I did go through a point in my career where when I was moving into this, I'm like, what? Like, how could I possibly leave my science behind and go and do this? But I think the beauty of science, and when you're talking about like earning that degree, what I think it can give you is also, it's hard to get a science degree, and it gives you confidence. You've challenged yourself to do something, you've achieved it, and you can feel good about that. And then when you approach other decisions in your life or other challenges, you think, I can break that down. I can break it down like you do in science to these, I want to answer a question. I'm going to break it down and understand what are all the different things I need to be able to address or answer in order to get through that. And that, I think, was the beauty of science for me. So while I don't use the discipline of science, I use the actual subject matter. I actually do use that discipline, that approach of strategic thinking every day in my work. And I mean, it is a point of pride. I'm like, you know what? I have a couple of advanced degrees. I actually can solve this. I can figure this out. And there was another question that was sort of in the group too, about what do you do when other people are kind of taking up the space in the room, answering all the questions or whatever else, and how do you do that? And I think, again, science gives you confidence. So Danya, to your point, it gives people in whatever part of the world that they're in the confidence in themselves to be able to take on that next challenge. And I always felt that was the great thing about it. So while sometimes I miss the subject matter, I feel that I have carried it through my career, even though I've moved in a direction that I would have never imagined when I was doing my undergrad at the University of Waterloo.
Very interesting point. And it's very true. I mean, you learn a lot in your degree, and it provides you skill sets for how you handle other situations and other career moves. Mm-hmm. And definitely I'm resonating with all that you're all speaking about. Go ahead, Ellie.
I totally agree. That's a great point about confidence. And it also, like rightly or wrongly, gives other people respect for you, and they will listen to you more, and they will give you the floor more when you have something like a science degree behind you. Again, rightly or wrongly, but it's just the way it is. So it's a pretty nice additive for sure.
I think for me, something that, I mean, having a science degree is great. But, some of the other things that I find for me is, I'm a woman, I'm a scientist, and I'm obviously a minority. And that's definitely something, it's kind of interesting because in this era of Zoom meetings, I don't think I was as fully aware of it as it is now when you have a meeting on Zoom and you have like 20 faces all around and you're like, hey, one of these is not like the others. Um, and it's really kind of brought that awareness for me. But one thing that's really important for me is the confidence in know that I know my stuff. And so instead of trying to focus on that, what I try and focus is I'm going to earn people's respect because I know my stuff and they know that I'm reliable, I'm accountable, and I get the job done. And so just to say that even though I am a minority in this field, I'm so incredibly proud of it because I'm so incredibly proud that when I work with my colleagues, they respect me. I'm incredibly proud when I go out into the community and talk to people from other young girls who, would not usually envision themselves being in science and them saying, oh, you're a scientist? So I'm just incredibly proud about being a minority and what I can give back to the community. And that's something that I definitely want to do more of.
Great. Great. It's true. I mean, it's a combination of competence and confidence, and really having access to both to empower you to move in the direction that you choose to go to. I guess it brings me to, questions such as what challenges or hurdles have you overcome going through the different stages in your career or in your life? Has anything stuck out that you sort of would say this would help other women to hear? What are some of the challenges that you, or hurdles that you have overcome going through different phases of your life? Therese?
When you ask that, it makes me think of when I did a master's in business and I did a practicum at the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, and that was my first real job. And I remember working directly with the CEO there. His name was Gary Cardiff, and he was a very big influence on my career, my life. And what he said to me, I remember this comes to me often, is what my hope for you is that you achieve your full potential. He was worried, he said, that I would not achieve my full potential because I think what he worried about for women was that they would take a back seat or they would hold back and they would not sort of achieve everything they could. And so that voice kind of rang in my ears to actually do what came up earlier in the conversation, which is when do you know it's time to move on? It's time to take another career path. It's time to make a change. So this whole idea of balance and keeping it all together, when do you know that you're not actually in the right situation, that you've pushed that rock up the hill one too many times and it's time to make a switch? And what rings in my ear is Gary Cardiff and those words and saying, is this my path to achieving my full potential? Will I be sort of fully expressed if I continue along this path? Is it worth the effort, or is it time to sort of retract and take another path? And that's happened. I mean, I've had probably 13 jobs in 9 different industries. So those have been, I look back and go, oh yes, I can tell a great story for how I went from one career to the next and why it made sense and everything else. My role is communications and PR and marketing. I mean, of course I can tell that story. In the moment though, it didn't feel that way. In the moment, it was like, ugh, this feels sticky. It doesn't feel like I wanted it to feel. And over the course of my career, I think I was able to say more clearly, this is why, right? It's not consistent with my value set, or these are not people I want to come and work with every day, or I don't feel I'm able to Ellie's point, bring my whole self to work, right? So, but earlier in my career, it would just feel weird. And I wonder kind of how to get around it. So I think thinking what helped me to get through those sticky parts was thinking of the people that were an influence in my life and that said things like that to me to give me a focus, to give me something to go, well, okay, what am I really doing here? And am I achieving kind of what my path is? And I think you've got to be careful not to go, here's my 5-year path. I'm going to set it when I'm in university. I'm not going to veer from it. Like I'm just going to drive into it. I think that flexibility is what I think has been very helpful as I've chosen to challenge all the way through my career and make those changes. And you can definitely look back on your career and say, if I'd chosen to do this instead of that, where would I be today? But that is, to me, part 2. And the part 2 is look forward, don't look back, right? Don't spend your time driving while looking in the rear view mirror. That certainly is going to get you to crash. So I think you need to learn from the past, but really focus on what's ahead and not kind of live in regret, but understand how you take the learnings and move forward.
That's great. Thank you, Therese. Well, let's take a pause right now, fill our teacups up, and watch a video on Nobel Prize winner Donna Strickland speak about her Choose to Challenge. We're having some technical difficulties, so we'll try and see if we can restart the video. Let's try that one more time.
Well, I would love to try that one more time, but it seems that this is not my day. So I'm just going to appear like this again, once again, awkwardly, and let everyone know that I will post that link, even though I practiced it 16 times today. I will post it next week alongside this chat so you can watch our video from Professor Donna Strickland on how she chooses to challenge. I'm going now. Bye.
Okay,
That works out, Megan. Gives us a little more time to chat.
We're choosing to challenge that technology isn't always your friend.
right, that's right. There's always choose and challenge involved in everyday life. So I'm sure everybody will enjoy seeing Donna Strickland's video and hear her inspiring and encouraging words. What we could do as another side break is perhaps take a look at some of what the audience has written in as their Choose to Challenge and see what they've said. So we have a quote here from April Wittig, who says, even in the 21st century, women are still underestimated and undervalued. We need to stand up for ourselves, and if we don't choose the challenge, who will? And this is
Hi, April. April was in my department. She's my grad coordinator. She was awesome.
Okay, nice. So a nice shout out.
Yeah, hi.
And we have another quote from Shan Wang, who says she chooses to challenge the rare number of women in senior leadership positions of pharmaceutical and healthcare organizations by continuing the dialogue and supporting women in leadership initiatives. So that's sort of what we've been talking about, empowering other women and giving opportunities to women to rise up and meet the challenge. We have actually a quote from a fellow named Atta Abbas Nakvi. He says, I come from a society where women are not usually allowed to pursue higher studies and employment opportunities. They are expected to marry and raise their children. But I have challenged this mindset and am encouraging my sister to pursue a bachelor degree in pharmacy. At the time, I have helped my wife to get an English language certificate and encouraging her to further pursue a master's degree. So you can see a little bit about, the diversity of individuals who have chosen to challenge. Now, how do you relate to these quotes from these individuals? So I'm throwing it to the panels and what your thoughts are and further ideas on these individuals, and obviously a diverse thought.
I think one of the things that I take away from these quotes that are really interesting is that, this is obviously quite bringing up an equity or an equality issue here. But I think there's lots of people, not just women, but men who are on board with choosing a challenge to support women. I think it's really amazing in my life to see that one of the reasons I've succeeded is because I've surrounded myself with people who are supportive of me and just think that I'm here because I have merit and should be here where I am. So I think there's a real positive spin to especially that last quote, where there's lots of people who are going to be supporting women in these roles. In fact, on the topic of the last question, I kind of wanted to point out that one of the challenges I face that I think if I could redo and know this piece of information, it would be helpful, is the idea that a lot of the people that are going to put you down, especially when you're a younger woman, you're never going to see them again. They're kind of narrow-minded, mean-spirited people, and not always, but mostly you're not going to see them again. And it's not always worth wasting your energy on being upset about them. There were lots of people, you know, working at mine sites or something that didn't like a small, like petite blonde woman telling them to, you know, drill here or drill there. And so you get some nasty comments, but most people don't think that about you. And most people are not that narrow-minded. So I would say the majority of people are quite open to women in our society right now. I should say it's very focused, but yeah.
Tanya?
And on the topic of, because I guess this sort of opens this whole notion of unconscious bias. And I have a biology background, so I do like to put in some bio facts where I can. But I like to think of or perceive or look at unconscious biases in an evolutionary perspective, because they really are a survival heuristic. And for over 2 million years, we lived as hunter-gatherers, and we picked up on recognition patterns of behavior and visual attributes to basically help us survive. And conversely, we've only been living as modern humans for over 10,000 years. So when we face unconscious bias at work, when we get, for instance, a male colleague who may, you know, give us attitude or maybe ignore us, I think a big place comes from the fact that we're living in this tech era, almost like living in this cyberpunk reality, but we're kind of operating as primates. And that's obviously a hyperbolization, but it's just to sort of paint the picture of what I'm trying to say. And it's not to say that things don't change, because if anyone's taken an evolution course, you know that it's not confined to just physiology and anatomy. Behavior can also evolve. But that it takes time, and it takes conversations like this, and it takes not pinning us up against men, but to bring them on these conversations and just continue to talk and evolve. So yeah.
I agree 100%. I mean, if I really am honest and I look back, I don't think I could ever say that it was through the challenges that I faced in my career, it was more men than women. Like, it was equal. I mean, there were, you know, it used to surprise me, but I remember actually distinctly somebody that I worked with who was a very successful woman in her career saying to me, it was hard on me and it's going to be hard on you. Like, I'm going to take the shine off you. You're like a new penny. And it was a hard lesson. And at the time I was horrified and upset and everything else. And I think what she thought was, she's not going to smooth the path for me. She's going to make it hard, because it is going to be hard, and she's going to teach me. So I choose to look at it that way. Now, maybe she was just a nasty person and wanted to be mean, but I didn't think of it as, you're a woman, and so therefore you should make a path easier for me. It's sort of, I kind of always looked at it as, it's up to me to create my opportunity. And if I can't go in this direction because this person is, you know, maybe not somebody I care about, to your point, Ellie, I don't care about what they think of me, but they happen to be in a position of power that I can't get through, I'm going to move around. But I never thought of it as women versus men. It was, you know, it's like people, and there's good people and bad people, and they may have different reasons for doing what they're doing. And usually I don't want to actually sit and figure that out. That's their problem. Like, my issue is I want to do something else. So how do I just get around it? It's more taking that approach than trying to change their viewpoint or make them think in a different way. I'll be like, okay, you're not one of my people. I'm going to move around. I'll find somebody else that kind of thinks more in the way that's going to help me to be successful in what I want to do.
I think something that's really important when you're talking about unconscious bias or conscious bias is really, some of it starts at home. And I think Yvette Miata there made a comment about how gender parity starts at home. And disclaimer, that's my twin sister, by the way. But say that that's important, because I think sometimes a lot of people grow up in this homes where there are male roles and there are female roles, and then they kind of grow up with this and then take the same mentality into the workplace. And so they see a woman doing a role like you, Ellie, like telling somebody what to drill, and they're like, no, you don't know what you're doing. And I think so. I think it's really important for me as a mother, like raising my children, that it was really important for me to know them to know that every role everybody can do, and this is not just a man's role or a woman's role. I see that a lot in science. I mean, there's a lot of male scientists around me. And when I even look at my industry, a lot of the people who are in management will be middle-aged white men, and that's just how it is. And so I'm, like I said before, just choosing to challenge that, because I can do that job as well. And I can also teach my children that there is no job that they can't do because of their gender.
That brings me to the question of what advice would you give young women today who want to enter into leadership roles? Like, what should they look out for and be prepared for? So given all your expertise and your challenges and what you've encountered throughout your life, what would you give as advice to women who want to enter into these leadership roles? I see Therese ready to tackle that.
Well, I have a 14-year-old girl, so this is a conversation every day for us. And it's a mix of, what are you interested in? Like, what do you want to do with your life? What do you think that might want to be? While at the very same time saying, and by the way, you don't have to have it all figured out. Certainly not at 14, but not even at 19 or 20 or 25, or, you can actually flex in your life and in your career from one thing to another. You want to sort of have some direction that you're heading in, but you can keep flexibility in that. So I think the advice that I'd like to give is don't put pressure on yourself at I would say really at any stage. I mean, I'm still evolving my career. Don't put pressure on yourself to have it all figured out. Think of what it is that really matters to you. And I would say, you can think of 3 values that you have, like what is important to you in the workplace. And at the beginning of your career, you don't probably get to have all 3, because your job there is to get experience. And so, mine might be, a continual learning environment, working with people that I really enjoy and being able to contribute. And at this stage in my career, I would never work in a job where I didn't have all 3. But when I was starting my career, I had to pick one. And for me at that time, I wasn't really contributing that much. I mean, I had lots of education, but no real experience. So I want to work with people that I admire, right? I mean, and that I can learn something from. So I think if you're checking in with yourself and saying, what matters to you? Is it the kind of people that you work with? Are you willing to kind of hold your nose and work with people that you might not love working with to achieve a certain skill set or whatever? But just be in choice. Just know what that is and understand the trade-offs that you're making. So you don't find yourself in a situation where you're saying, how did I get here? You're kind of continually the master of your life. You're in charge of your own future. You are determining where you want to go. And I think we have the opportunity as women, men, whatever, to do that. So just own it. And then you can own your path, and you're not going to find yourself where you're looking to blame for why you're where you are. You can say, I own it. I'm in charge of this. I'm in control. Ultimately, that's going to make you feel good, because if you got yourself into it, you can probably get yourself out and into the next thing. So the advice is really owning it, doing your work, understanding, and sort of charting your own course.
Yeah, that's great. And that's basically exactly what you just said. Making your decision and, sort of having the different stages at the beginning where you're, having to choose one. You don't have a lot to offer, but you have a lot to learn. And then you build on that. And sometimes, as you build and you continue to grow, I know we've discussed this before, where, you get to a certain point and you almost feel like you have imposter syndrome. And I know we've discussed that before. And I wonder if any of you have, sort of felt that, or, I see Danya, did you want to?
No, I have imposter syndrome. I have it all the time. I have it at times I don't even know I have it. My co-founder, who's male and very alpha, will always tell me, he's like, you doubt yourself too much.
Right.
And you know, it's very, I don't want to say female typical, but there are studies that show that in general, women tend to be more agreeable than men. And also from an imposter syndrome standpoint, women doubt themselves more than men. And that has to do partly with differences in testosterone levels, because testosterone actually makes you take more risks. It actually alters your neurochemistry. I won't go into details of that, but that's a real thing. If anyone wants to look it up, look up Rob Sapolsky on YouTube, Stanford bioprof. But yeah, I am conscious of the fact that I doubt myself, but to all the women out there who want to fight that, just be aware of it and just know what you know and learn to just bite the bullet and say it at times. And say the off chance happens, you get it wrong, you say something wrong, it's fake news, it's fine. Keep your head up high. Life goes on, you know? You don't have to be perfect. So
Or reframe, right? Reframe it as you question yourself, but that's not a bad thing. Like you question yourself, so you're taking the moment as a good scientist to go check my hypothesis. Like, is this, that's I think a great way to look at it, because I do think imposter syndrome is real for a lot of people. And we were talking in our sort of pre-check thing that I'm seeing it a lot more now, and I think it's a little bit of a fact of COVID too, where we're not getting those you know, those signals that you normally get in the workplace where you pass somebody after a meeting and they're kind of give you a smile or a nod even in the meeting or whatever else. It's more forced because we have to do it all by email. So there might be a little bit more of it now than there is. And I think a healthy amount of that sort of skeptical thinking, like, ooh, is also good, so that you don't have the opposite, which is barreling through like the proverbial bull in the china shop thinking you don't have anything to learn. So, you know, Danya, I mean, we've met in a very short time, but I'm like, wow, if you have imposter syndrome, like, can you imagine the people around you, how they must feel, right? So I think it is though something that helps you go, okay, like, let me think about that, double check, and then feel really strong when you're going forward with your point of view, because you did take the time to sort of check it before you move forward.
The
I
one
wanted
I always,
go ahead, Ellie.
the
Go
one
ahead.
thing I always think about when I think about feeling unconfident is that most people are very self-absorbed and they're actually thinking about themselves and what they're saying and the mistake they just made. So it kind of helps to like reframe if you're sitting in a meeting and you said something stupid. It's like, no, they're not thinking about that. They're thinking about the thing they just said that was stupid. And
Ellie, that is so true. We're all our own narcissists.
yes.
It's so true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to just touch on what, you know, just to add to Danya's, you know, you talked about women are more likely to feel imposter syndrome. And to add to that, you know, just to add to the numbers, minority women are even more so likely to feel imposter syndrome. You know, I read just a study once about how women, you know, won't apply for a job because they're like, oh my gosh, I only have like, you know, I only have 60%. I'm not going to apply for a job unless I have 90% or more of the skill sets. Whereas guys will read it and sometimes be like, oh, I got 30%, I'm good to go. I'm going to go ahead and apply. And that is part of that is imposter syndrome, is feeling like I'm not good enough. And I think it's something that as women we deal with. And it's something that I don't feel like realistically I could ever get rid of it, but I think being aware of it and checking myself on it. Hey, Yvonne, you're feeling imposter syndrome. You know your stuff more than anybody in this room. I think just having that awareness of it makes a huge difference. So having a description, having a term to use, like, or even when I see other women struggling, saying to them too, like, hey, you know your stuff. You're the subject matter expert. You have imposter syndrome. It's real. Own it. And, you know, once you have accepted that, I feel like you can move forward.
Right. Well, that's very true. And I mean, you've all brought up very important points and definitely, you know, poses challenges. But I think the most important part is to be self-aware and to, you know, sort of build the competence and the confidence within you in terms of, you know, you've paid your dues, you've worked up to where you are, and you've worked diligently and conscientiously, and you know, just to continue working, but believing in yourself. And I think choosing to challenge, you know, individuals who, you know, don't give you the credit that you have worked hard to deserve. I see Megan, who has joined us, and would you add something, Megan?
like the worst version of Pokeroo, right? I just appear and everyone knows there's a problem. I'm just mindful of the time. So I'm afraid that this time I have to be the bearer of bad news, which is I wish that we had scheduled this for, 4 hours so that we could keep listening to you. And so hopefully we'll be able to find a way to do this again, but I'll just go back on mute, reminding everyone it's 3:56.
No problem. Thank you, Megan. Well, there's a lot to discuss, and we didn't even get onto the topic of what challenges, we have all encountered in our career or family life with our current world of COVID. And I'm sure all of you can discuss at length how this pandemic has revealed gaps in our society and what some of them are. And unfortunately, we are running out of time. So we do have to, wrap this up. And I wanted to say this has been fantastic. And I've thoroughly enjoyed having this dynamic discussion with all of you. And we've touched on so many different topics. And summing everything up, choosing to challenge means basically making a change, taking a chance, overcoming obstacles, creating a balance between career and family, and having courage to make a difference for the future. So I want to thank you to our panel for their thoughts, passions, and strengths conveyed, and to our audience for their participation in today's event sponsored by the Faculty of Science at the University of Waterloo for International Women's Day. And we look forward to hearing from you, the audience. If you've enjoyed the discussion today and have ideas on other topics or discussions going forward, please get in touch with the Faculty of Science and let them know. So I want to say thank you to everyone, and remember, make your choose to challenge today. And if there's questions that we can answer, Megan, I'm going to leave it up to you to let us know. And if not, pass it on to you.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, we did have some questions that we weren't able to get to, so I will sort out how we might be able to get some responses from you. But I want to say thank you very much to the 5 of you. I've had the pleasure to meet each of you individually, and this has just been amazing. You have surpassed my wildest dreams for how this could have gone. So thank you. It was really, really great to hear from you. I really enjoyed even just, sort of the theme I take from this is that choose to challenge is to have a choice, right? Which I think is great. And each of you sort of touched upon that in a different way. And that's certainly what I'm going to take moving forward. And to everyone in the audience, I know an hour in front of a computer when you have other things to do it can be a long time. So thank you. And thank you for being so engaged in the chat. I will send the chat and the questions on to the panelists. Like I said, I'm hoping that they're going to come back for future events. So, if you think that's a great idea, feel free to email us and let us know. And otherwise, I hope that everyone enjoys the rest of International Women's Day and is ready to get out there and choose to challenge. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.